Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Trade negotiations between India and the US are at a sensitive stage, say government sources. The Indian delegation has extended its stay in Washington by 3 days till today. If the talks fail, 26% additional tariffs on India are imminent. Torrent Pharma is set to acquire 46% stake in JB Chemicals from KKR for just under 12,000 crore rupees. Will also launch an open offer, taking the deal size to 19,000 crores and more. The deal will make Torrent the fourth largest pharma company in India. The Sensex and the Nifty snap a 4-day winning streak, but mid-caps continue to gain for the seventh day. The Nifty has gained more than 8% in the first half of 2025, with bank stocks leading the rally. Indian financial system remains resilient with healthy balance sheets amidst elevated global uncertainties, says the RBI's Financial Stability Report. Bad loans are expected to stay near multi-decade lows, and banks have adequate capital buffers even under adverse stress scenarios. The government is likely to invite financial bids for IDBI Bank soon. Sources say officials are close to concluding a share purchase agreement with potential suitors. It's the last day for IndusInd Bank to send its candidates for CEO's position to the RBI. Sources say Axis Bank's Rajiv Anand leads the race. The bank is also likely to recommend Rahul Shukla of HDFC Bank and Anup Saha of Bajaj Finance. The US Senate advances President Trump's spending bill by a slim margin. The latest version of the bill reduces the tax on remittances to 1%, but the bill stuns the clean energy industry with a new tax on wind and solar projects. At least 12 people are killed and dozens injured after an explosion at an industrial area in Telangana. The blast took place at a reactor of Sigachi Chemicals factory, which manufactures microcrystalline cellulose. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu hosts tech leaders as he aims to build a quantum valley in Amravati. Naidu says IBM and TCS, along with L&T, have formed a consortium to focus on quantum computing and AI. That's an exclusive. Zomato's founder rGoyal is betting big on the aviation sector. A deep dive into his investment into a startup that promises buses in the sky. That's coming up. Well, let's start with the market action today. The Sensex and the Nifty snapped a 4-day winning streak, but mid-caps continue to gain ground. The Sensex lost over 450 points and the Nifty lost about 120 points. The Nifty banked down 130 points. Mid-caps closing about 0.5% higher. That is the session for today. But the Nifty has gained more than 8% in the first 6 months of this year. It's a half year that we're almost completing. We bring you the half-yearly market report card that's coming up in just a bit. But the big story this evening, the trade negotiations between India and the US are, quote unquote, at a sensitive stage. Sources say the Indian delegation has extended its stay in Washington by 3 days. Till today, there is no consensus yet on agri, dairy, steel tariffs and GM crops. Now, if the talks fail, 26% additional tariffs on India are imminent. Parikshit is standing by now with more details. Parikshit, the Indian team, the Indian negotiators have extended their stay in DC. That time comes to a close today. There continues to be an impasse, so to speak, on some of those crucial issues. In fact, the finance minister commenting here that there are red lines as far as agri is concerned. What are you picking up? Has there been any forward movement, any possibility of a breakthrough?
Literally 8 days to go for the reciprocal tariffs to kick in. And the Indian side, in fact, sources in the government telling us that high tariffs, 26% tariffs are imminent if we don't get a deal, and things have reached a very sensitive stage. This essentially means we've reached no consensus on some of the critical areas in the trade deal. The problem is United States wants far-reaching concessions from India all across the board. Howard Lutnick, at the start of this administration, had said that we don't want a package of concessions. We want an all-out zero-for-zero tariffs. So what seems to be the problem? The problem is United States wants greater market access for US agriculture goods, their wheat, rice, maize, and dairy products. This has been a red line in all our trade negotiations, not just with the US, but it's been a red line with the European Union as well. US is not willing to accept that. We're requesting for a reprieve from the 50% tariff that has been imposed on steel by the US government. The US is not ready to give India that concession. We're asking for fair access for labor-intensive goods. US wants to put us in a quota system whereby a certain number of products by MSMEs or from the textiles or furniture or toy sector could come into the United States, but beyond that, there will be high tariffs. So also considering there is no concession, no consensus on the non-tariff barriers right now, it seems that things are at a very tricky stage in the negotiation. It can go anywhere right now, unless there is some sort of political consensus between the two sides. But from what we hear from our sources on the ground, that till now there is no clear consensus, and that's why the Indian government sources indicating now that we cannot compromise on our national interest. It cannot be that Donald Trump and the US government wins alone. It has to be a win-win for both India and the United States. Until that happens, we will not compromise. We will not give this victory to United States unless our farmers, our manufacturing sector also wins. So let's see what happens in the days to come.
Yes, we will have to wait to see, but talks at a sensitive stage is what we're given to understand. Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. And as we were pointing out, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said that India would love to have a big, good and beautiful trade agreement with the US, but not without riders. Speaking to the Financial Express, the Finance Minister highlighted dairy and agriculture are red lines that India has drawn in the talks with the US. The minister was reacting to President Trump's remarks that a deal could soon open up the Indian market. And when asked about the July 9th deadline, whether it could be extended or not, President Trump remained ambivalent, saying he could defer the deadline or even shorten it. Take a look.
Is that July 9th date a set for tariffs to snap back, or could there be a...
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%.
Well, that's President Trump saying could extend it, could even shorten it. Now, in a big win for the US, Canada has cancelled its digital services tax, which targeted American tech companies. The move came just hours before the tax was set to take effect. Following the move, Prime Minister Mark Carney and US President Donald Trump have agreed to resume trade negotiations and reach a deal, hopefully, by the 21st of July. The implementation of the DST would have meant that digital services companies with a revenue of over $20 million a year in Canada would have had to pay a 3% tax. The payment would have been applied retrospectively to 2022, Canada holding back, and hence talks now resuming. The big corporate story back home, Torrent Pharma is set to acquire JB Chemicals in a deal worth more than 19,000 crores. The deal will make Torrent the fourth largest pharma company in the country. Ekta standing by with the contours of the deal and its significance. Ekta.
Well, yes, Torrent Pharma has announced a two-phase acquisition of JB Chemicals from KKR, marking one of the largest deals in India's branded pharma space since possibly the Ranbaxy-Sun merger. Torrent will first acquire 46.39% stake for around 11,917 crores and may pick up an additional 2.8% from JB Chemical employees at around 1,600 rupees per share. An open offer for 26% follows at around 1,639 rupees per share, with the total size of the acquisition for Torrent possibly going up to as much as 19,480 odd crores. Now, in the second phase, the companies will merge, with JB shareholders receiving 51 Torrent shares for every 100 held. Now, the deal values JB Chemicals at around 25,689 crores and 11% discount to its closing price ahead of the deal. With the JB Chemicals acquisition, Torrent Pharma is now poised to rise from the 6th to the 4th largest pharma company in India. The deal, in fact, is expected to boost its domestic revenues by 35%, surpassing 8,600 crores based on FY25 numbers. Torrent will strengthen its dominance in cardiac and gastro segments, gaining top brands like cardiac drug Cilacar with sales of 785 crores and gastro drug Metrogyl at around 342 crores in terms of a size of a drug. It also secures entry into ophthalmology and expands its footprint in the global CDMO space. Torrent Pharma may in fact fund the JB Chemicals acquisition through a mix of internal accruals, debt and equity via QIP. It could take on as much as 10,000 to 12,500 crores of debt, pushing the combined net debt to around 14,500 crores and a net debt to EBITDA to around 3 times on an FY25 basis, according to analysts. However, analysts including DAM Capital are not overly concerned. They point to Torrent's steady free cash flows and believe a 2 times EV to EBITDA leverage is reasonable and the debt could be paid down in 3 to 4 years. Now, while JB Chemicals currently operates at a lower EBITDA margin than Torrent Pharma, analysts are not overly concerned about that either. Torrent has had a strong track record of cost rationalization as seen in its past acquisitions of Elder, Unichem and Curatio, which saw margin expansions within 1 to 2 years. While we could see near-term dilution, analysts believe the combined entity could target EBITDA margins of 34 to 35% over the next 3 to 4 years. Lastly, what are the brokerages saying? IIFL recommends JB shareholders should avoid tendering in the open offer and wait to swap their shares in the merger. Nomura expects the adjusted EPS accretion in the mid-single to low double digits. They maintain a neutral rating with a target price of 3580. HSBC expects the deal to be 3% accretive to FY27 estimated EPS estimates. They retain a buy with a target price of 3,775.
All right, Ekta, many thanks for joining us. At least 12 people are dead and dozens injured after an explosion at an industrial area in Telangana. Now, the blast took place at Segachi Pharma's factory in the state's Sangareddy district. The company manufactures microcrystalline cellulose, and the blast is likely to have occurred at a reactor. Officials are yet to confirm what triggered the explosion. Both state and central government have announced monetary compensation for the deceased. Macro data: India's industrial production slowed to a 9-month low, 1.2% in May as against a 2.6% in April. Electricity generation recorded the steepest fall in 5 years due to unseasonal rains. Early monsoon also dampened mining output, while manufacturing sector output rose by 2.6%, so IIP at a 9-month low. The record RBI dividend transfer of 2.69 lakh crore rupees has helped the government post a fiscal surplus for the first 2 months of this financial year. Gross fiscal deficit contracted by 93% to just over 13,000 crore rupees. This is much below the deficit of over 50,000 crore rupees reported in the last fiscal. With this, India's financial show a surplus of 1.73 lakh crore rupees in May 2025 compared to a surplus of 1.59 lakh crore rupees in the same period last fiscal. Gross collections of the goods and services tax have hit an all-time high of 22 lakh crore rupees in FY25, marking a 9.4% increase on an annualized basis. According to government data, the average monthly collections came in at nearly 2 lakh crore rupees. Tomorrow will mark the 8th anniversary of the GST, and we will look back at the hits and misses with a special show at 5 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18, 8 years of the goods and services tax. Indian Railways has now officially notified a nationwide fare hike effective tomorrow. That's the 1st of July. For non-AC passengers, fares will be increased by 1 paise for every kilometre. For AC passengers, fares have been hiked by 2 paise per kilometre. A non-AC ticket from Mumbai to Delhi will now cost 14 rupees more, and an AC 3-tier ticket will cost 28 rupees more after the fare revision. The government says the changes aim to improve service sustainability. Well, the Reserve Bank of India has released its financial stability report, saying that the Indian financial system remains resilient with a healthy balance sheet amidst elevated global uncertainties. Bad loans expected to stay near multi-decade lows, and banks have adequate capital buffers even under adverse stress scenarios. Latha's here with the details. Latha, so, it's pretty sanguine news coming in there from the RBI as far as the banking sector stability picture is concerned.
That's well put, Shireen. I would summarize it in just 4 words: global risks, but domestic bliss. That seems to be the message from the Reserve Bank, but it's not surprising. When the global risks are known, the financial system and the global economy are seeing elevated trade and other economic policy risks. Financial markets are volatile, especially the debt markets, the bond markets, the Reserve Bank points out. And it says that while these are new risks, the old vulnerability of very high public debt, whether it's US or China or EU, all developed areas, showing high debt, not to speak of emerging markets. In this scenario, you have an Indian economy which is actually the key driver of global growth itself, a big contributor to global growth. And it is a growth underpinned by macro stability. Very good macros. You spoke of fiscal surplus just a while ago. There's also a current account surplus. So macros very sound. In the financial sector itself, whether it's banks, NBFCs or corporates, all of them are showing very healthy balance sheets. As the Reserve Bank puts it, the financial system itself is very healthy because of rate cuts, liquidity infusion, and of course the CRR cut that's coming. The stress tests are showing that mutual funds and clearing corporations are also relatively resilient. You must remember that the FSR covers all financial sector elements, and the insurance regulator points out that the consolidated solvency ratio of the insurance sector remains above the minimum threshold limits that are set. But as always, the FSR concentrates a little more on the banking sector and the NBFCs. There it points out, as you said, GNPA, that's gross bad loans and net bad loans, are at multi-decadal lows. Gross NPAs at 2.3%. I don't know when we last heard that number. And net NPAs at 0.7%. But there is also a scenario building that the FSR does. What if scenarios? As a baseline, they expect that this is the lowest that GNPAs will be. In the baseline, they're likely to rise to 2.5% in March 2026, in 27. And capital adequacy is likely to fall a bit from 17.2 to 17, which is way above Basel limits. And the CET, which is the common equity, actual share, equity shares, that percentage also is expected to rise actually in the baseline scenario from 14.6 to 15.2. But if there is an adverse scenario, then the GNPA can rise to 5.6. In a slightly less adverse scenario, goes to 5.2. And that's the capital adequacy, which can dip to 14.2 and to 14.6. The common equity can dip to 12.5 and 12.9. Even then, it will be above the Basel level minimum threshold limits. NBFCs also, gross NPAs at multi-quarter lows, multi-year lows of 2.9%. Again, if you apply the baseline risk, it can go to 3.3 by 1 year. That is March 2026. Capital adequacy can dip at the baseline scenario. So the baseline indicates that we are seeing the best ratios now. And things may wasn't just a wee bit in a year, but this is really a Goldilocks scenario for banks and NBFCs. The only point that the Reserve Bank makes, both for banks and for NBFCs, is that credit growth is very slow. For banks at 9.6% in mid-June, and for NBFCs as well, it is at multi-quarter lows.
So credit growth worry, but on balance, it's good news coming in from the RBI as far as the banking sector is concerned. Lata, many thanks for joining us there to give us the highlights of what the RBI has to say in its financial stability report. Now, the government is set to invite financial bids for IDBI Bank soon. Sources tell us that a share purchase agreement with potential suitors is likely to be closed soon. Shares of the IDBI Bank surging in trade today on the back of the news. Remember, the stake sale in the bank has been delayed for years now. However, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had earlier indicated that the IDBI Bank deal is expected to be completed in FY26. It is the last day for IndusInd Bank to send names for the CEO position to the Reserve Bank. We learned from sources that Axis Bank's Rajiv Anand leads the race. The bank is also likely to recommend the names of Rahul Shukla from HDFC Bank and Anup Saha of Bajaj Finance. Remember, once IndusInd Bank sends in the name, RBI will come back with its approval. The Bombay High Court has deferred a hearing of the petition filed by the CEO of HDFC Bank, Shashidhar Jagdishan, against Leelavati Trust. The bank CEO is seeking the quashing of an FIR filed against him by the Leelavati Trust alleging cheating and fraud. HDFC Bank has denied all allegations. The court will take up the case on the 14th of July. Payment and identity cards maker Manipal Cards is looking to debut on Dalal Street. The company has filed a confidential draft red herring prospectus to raise 1,200 crore rupees. According to Money Control, the IPO is likely to comprise of a mix of primary and secondary share sales. Currently, the promoters led by Gautam Pai and family hold a majority stake of 60% in the company. And Krispy Kreme's India operator Cure Foods has filed a draft paper with the market regulator for its IPO. The offer comprises a fresh issue of shares worth 800 crore rupees as well as an offer for sale, which will see Iron Pillar, PCC, Crimson Winter and CureFit Healthcare make partial exits. The company could hit the market between November and December this year. The proceeds will be used for expansion and equipment. Now, we are at the halfway point of 2025 calendar year, and in the first 6 months, the Nifty has gained more than 8%, led by bank stocks. Hormuz is here with the half-yearly report card, not looking bad at all, Hormuz.
More action than in an action film, more drama than in a drama film. Well, I guess the markets have seen it all in the first 6 months of 2025, be it tariffs, be it war, be it ceasefires. And after all of this, the Nifty has trumped up with returns of 8.5% in the first 6 months of the year. And this is after an 18% recovery that the index has seen from the lows that it had made at the start of 2025. The Nifty Bank, which is already trading at record highs, is up 13% so far in the first half of this year. And this tinge of green that you see in the mid-cap and the small-cap index is after a near 30% recovery that these indices have seen from the lows that they made earlier this year. Now, which have been the top performers on the Nifty in the first 6 months? No prices for guessing, but it is BEL and Bajaj Finance. The 6 months, though, belong to the life insurance companies, SBI Life and HDFC Life. Both of them are seeing their second best calendar year already in terms of returns, and Bajaj Finserv, of course. And the underperformers, of course, it is the IT names that form the predominant list. TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all of them in there, along with Trent and, of course, IndusInd Bank, despite a near 35% recovery from the lows. You take a look at the mid-cap index, and Solar Industries has been the talk of the town in the last few months. Almost 80% returns in the first 6 months. Bharat Dynamics, BSE, L&T Finance is up 50% so far this year. What is down 50% this year, though, is Ola Electric, continuing to make new lows from its IPO price, along with names like Oracle Financial, Kalyan Jewellers, Premier Energies too forms a part of this list. Defense has been a common theme across the Nifty, the mid-caps and even the small caps, because Garden Reach is the top gainer on the small cap index, almost 90%. Narayana Health until last week making new highs. Reddington and Navin Fluorine, after a slew of positive brokerage commentary, is up almost 50% so far this year. And among the underperformers, though, it is names like Brainbees Solutions, Anantraj, Natco Pharma, losses of anywhere between 35 to 40%. So it's been an action-packed first half of 2025. Well, the bulls would definitely be hoping that the second half is less action-packed, but it has enough legs to take the Nifty past its record high levels.
All right, Hormuz, many thanks. Up next, Zomato's founder Deepinde rGoyal is betting big on the aviation sector. We dive into his investment in a startup that promises buses in the sky. And you can catch all of CNBC-TV18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu hosted tech leaders from around the world as he aims to build a quantum valley in Amravati. The aim is to attract top tech companies and focus on quantum computing and artificial intelligence. Shilpa spoke with the Chief Minister, who said IBM, TCS and L&T have formed a consortium to invest in Amravati, and Microsoft is set to follow suit.
It is one more leapfrog development in information technology.
Right.
I started iTech City to promote information technology exactly 3 decades back.
Right.
Today, Quantum Valley for quantum computing and also artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
AI, this is the order of the day. I want to create an ecosystem for quantum computing.
Right.
Then that will be the future. I'm giving land. Government also will be a partner to this ecosystem. We wanted to take to the logical. These 50 acres of land. Land is not the constraint. Today here, TCS and also IBM and also L&T, they are all consortium. They are working together. Now Microsoft also is coming back. Today we had a discussion. They want to start quantum computing here.
Well, that's Chandrababu Naidu, the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. Now, the U.S. Senate has agreed to advance President Trump's big, beautiful bill by a slim margin. The Senate will now debate the bill before a final vote takes place. The latest version of the bill reduces the tax on remittances to 1% in a major relief for the NRI community. An earlier version of the bill had proposed to tax remittances at 3.5%, but the new version of the bill has stunned the clean energy industry with a new tax on wind and solar projects. The bill also proposed to do away with incentives incentives on electric cars. Zomato founder Deepinde Goyal is betting big on the aviation sector. Goyal has backed a new aviation startup, LAT Aerospace, that aims to transform regional aviation with what it calls buses in the skies. Madhya is here to explain more about the new venture and what will ensure that these plans turn into reality. Madhya.
Well, clearly, Indian aviation is a space that's seen many startups, and connecting cities by air is seen as a big opportunity in India. LAT Aerospace, in which Deepinde Goyal has invested, has a unique pitch. The startup is talking about buses in the sky that will connect smaller cities where people mostly depend on road and trains to commute, which consumes several hours or sometimes days. So LAT Aerospace is building a system designed from scratch. In a social media post, a LAT Aerospace co-founder Surbhi Das has talked about building a 12 to 24-seater hybrid short takeoff and landing aircraft that will operate from air stops. Now that sounds like bus stops, which will be no bigger than a parking lot. Built closer to where people actually live, it will have no security lines or baggage belts, and people will just walk in and fly. That's the vision LAT Aerospace has. Now sources tell CNBC-TV18 the company has raised $50 million, of which $20 million are from Deepinde Goyal. They are inviting aerospace engineers and designers to join their ambitious project. In fact, Deepinde Goyal in a post has promised to match or exceed on-campus offers to attract engineering graduates. He also offered ESOPs to those joining the project as the founding team. Now, we have talked about air taxis in the past, the electric vertical takeoff and landing machines, a helicopter-like model that aims to beat urban traffic and help people with daily commute. We have some Indian startups who are developing air taxis, but those are still in the works. Some have their prototypes ready and are conducting tests. The government is yet to finalize the rules for air taxis. Then India also has a regional connectivity scheme where airlines use smaller jets up to 80-seater to connect Indian cities. Indigo, SpiceJet and Alliance Air operate regional flights. Then Star Air, Fly 91 are some regional players. Then there are helicopters that can carry up to 6 people from one city to another. Now, LAT Aerospace's vision of buses in the sky looks to be in concept stage, and the company will have to first build a design, a prototype, get government approval. It will have to plan on how and where to build these proposed air stops from where sky buses will operate. A key question is how it will use the existing airstrips, and will the government come up with new rules for this kind of model? It's a promising project that could revolutionize air travel in India, but building it from scratch means it will take longer to take shape.
Yes, it's not going to happen overnight, and of course it will require many regulatory approvals as well, but it is a start of something possibly disruptive. Madhya, many thanks for joining us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Do remember to stay tuned to CNBC TV18 on television, on your connected devices, on your smartphones, and also visit us on CNBC TV18 Access and CNBC TV18 Prime. From all of us here, goodbye. Thanks for watching.